this episode of Brain, Music and Learning, I talk with Dr. Miriam Lense about her research in parental interaction with their infants. So welcome to our Brain, Music and Learning podcast, Dr. Miriam Lense. It's so wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you
Great
so much.
Great to have you in Helsinki.
Oh, it's so wonderful to be here, and thank you for the invitation and the opportunity.
It's so nice to have you with us, and I definitely want to hear about your research in the interaction between the parents and kids.
Yes, it's one of my favorite topics to talk about.
Yes.
And so we do a lot of work in our lab at the Vanderbilt Music Cognition Lab on how we can use music to support parent-child interactions. Because music has so many properties that are inherent in it that are really natural platforms to provide positive parenting skills that are aligned with sort of best practices for supporting child social development and the parent-child relationship.
So since we are in Finland now, we have this traditional music play school system here. And when we ask parents why do they bring their kids to the music play school, so they give a range of answers like we had nothing to do, we thought it might be fun, I would hope my child would enjoy it. But they also mentioned that maybe the musical activities might make my kid smarter, or maybe these musical activities would provide like a foundation for a future musical hobby that the child might feel confident in starting this kind of hobby. But very, very seldom anybody mentions anything about interacting with their child.
I think that's so funny, and we see a very similar thing where parents, and I think this is really a reflection on how much parents are also socialized to be thinking about like what's good for my child and what added benefit can I give to my child and sort of the resources that way. But what is so good for a child is having a really supportive, interactive, positive parent-child or caregiving-child relationship. We know that social environment and that social interaction is some of the most important things for supporting children's development. And so what's great about music and music activities they're very natural, so many parents feel very comfortable doing them. But in doing those activities with their children, you're often providing some of the best parenting practices. So for example, there's research that suggests parents smile more when they sing to their children, and that's giving children a really important positive social interaction. Being very multimodal and having really large facial expressions and being animated, that helps draw your child's attention to your face, which gives them lots of important cues for social communication. It helps them see what your eyes are doing. It helps them see what your mouth is doing as you're singing and producing these different sounds. And singing actually helps children attend to somebody for longer, and it also actually helps them attend in ways that we know are specifically important for communication development. So our research shows, for example, that the predictable rhythm of singing, the beat that you might be tapping your foot along to, children are more likely to look at the singer's eyes, time locked to the beat of the singing, and caregivers or the singers are more likely to provide really informative social information, time locked to those beats as well. And so now, just by having the singing interaction, you're actually supporting the child and the parent in sharing really important social information and social communication, and that's going to help with social connection and help them interact in a really positive way.
So it sounds to me like the beat of the music, the tapping of the foot, is actually giving these moments of pushing together the parent and the child closer to each other in certain moments.
Yes.
And both of them are very active at those moments. Of course, active all the time, but that would be like the moment when the shared attention is like concentrated in those moments.
Yeah, definitely. And we talk about this concept of entrainment, which is a way of really aligning your activities in time to another stimulus. And so the music and the singing, it kind of provides the stimulus, if singing provided by the caregiver, but that is happening and providing sort of an opportunity for the attention to to modulate or to change so that exactly like you said, you're kind of getting them pushing in at the same time so that they're having this shared attention at the same time. And you then, what's great about singing too is the beat keeps going and the song keeps going. So it's not like you do it once and then you're off to something else, but you're getting repeated opportunities to keep doing this shared attention and this shared experience. Every time you sing, there's multiple opportunities even within that song. And then as children learn the songs and as the parents and children sort of develop their favorites, they get repeated information every single time that they do it. Yeah.
And this great power of music is available also in nursery rhymes because they also have this very steady rhythm.
Yes, 100%. And for parents who are sometimes a little bit less comfortable singing, nursery rhymes are great because sometimes the melody isn't as extreme, but the rhythm is really, really constant. And the other thing we see that happens a lot, and people tend to do a lot in nursery rhymes also, is that you get the repeated opportunities with every time the beat comes, but you also get at each of those beats what we would call redundant social information because caregivers are doing it through so many different modalities. So they're singing the information and providing that important information on the beats, but they're also doing these important facial expressions. They might do gestures or clapping. And so the kids are getting really it's repeated over time, but it's also incredibly rich at each one of those moments. And we know that especially early in life, children are really sensitive to learning those types of cues that occur across multiple modalities at once.
So this is the fire together, wire together model.
Yes.
You have so many things happening at the same time. It's going to be even more important for the brain. And also if we think about it from the learning point of view, so those cues are going to support the learning of the other cues that are happening at the same time.
Exactly. They kind of provide like that platform, and then once the children learn those cues, they can then also become sensitive to how things change within those cues, which helps them learn more and more fine-grained information and pay attention to sort of that become more and more sensitive to the small little changes that are happening that are going to give people the nuances of, for example, the specific sounds that are being done, so which helps children to learn to differentiate phonemes, for example. And so it provides a really nice opportunity to bundle that together, but then increase the children's attunement to each of the little gradations that they need for learning.
Yeah. And surprise is, of course, an element that is really important in children's songs and in nursery rhymes. And a surprise that you know that is coming.
Yes.
So the child is expecting the surprise to come and then is very much rewarded when it actually happens. 100%,
because children really like routines and they like when things are predictable, and then when you play with that predictability, it gets an opportunity for learning, and then it's fulfilled, so you get that reward signal that's happening. I have a colleague who's used the phrase that these musical interactions are routinized but not rote. So they're not exactly the same every single time, but they still provide a routine. So they provide a routine that gives that overall structure, and then within that structure they can play with it in small ways or in big ways, like built into the song, even about doing that type of surprise. And that really helps the children learn how things are changing, to learn skills across different examples of the song that happens.
That's really wonderful, and I can easily think of several Finnish nursery rhymes that have those qualities, and also of the musical play school structure as a whole. So the 45 minutes is divided into elements that really repeat every time the same beginning song, every time the same ending song. The parents, the adults might find it's again the same thing, and is this boring for the kids? But no, it's not. It's exactly the routine that makes them feel safe.
Yes, 100%. And the other things that's nice about that routine, and even if parents think, oh gosh, I've done this a million times, is that leaves the parents' attention available to be noticing small things their child is doing, because maybe the lyrics really well. You're not having to think, oh God, what are the lyrics? What do I need to recall? That becomes more automatic when you've sung the song so many times. But then you have the resources available to be saying, well, maybe I'm going to change it in this way to capture my child's attention, or, oh, I see them looking over there, so let me, not that you're cognitively thinking of this, but let me grab that toy, or let me direct our attention over here. So then you're having like joint attention moments as the child gets older. And so the predictability is great and the routine is great for the child, but it's also a really nice opportunity for the parents to then focus their attention and intentions on ways that they're supporting their child's learning.
Yes, and these things might be now behind those findings of musical activities helping children to learn better vocabularies, noticing syllables, and also controlling of their own attention.
Yes, 100%, because you're like, as you said before too, the firing together and wiring together too. You're training up these skills because you're making them really, really salient. You're doing these repeated practices with them, and you're sort of attuning, and the child is paying attention to the auditory signal, but also the other components, the social signals that are going along with it, which may be reasons why it's helping children to then support their language learning, because it's happening in this social context, and it's giving them this really rich linguistic information in a very meaningful learning context that has that combination of the predictability and the surprise at the same time.
Yes, and you have this amazing data from the eye gaze direction from 2-month-olds and 6-month-olds, and they behave differently, obviously, because the 2-month-olds are still so small, so they are still like struggling to find their gaze to go to the right direction, but still they are able to capture these moments.
Exactly, and we think that has to do with we think, and also our data shows, that it has to do with that predictability that you build into a song. And so when you have a song with that predictable beat, children can really, they can follow along, they can predict when that next beat is coming, and if that beat is aligned with that important social information, it means they're going to be getting that important social information at a time they can predict. So as early as 2 months, as you mentioned, we see that infants will increase their eye looking to somebody, time lock to the beat of music, and then by 6 months of age, they become extremely skilled at this. By 6 months, children are very, very good at these sort of dyadic two-person social interactions, and they become very good at predicting what will happen next. When they should next look at the caregiver's eyes, because they know when it's happening during singing, and we know the rhythm is really important because we use eye tracking, and we have children watch videos, and when we experimentally manipulate the timing so that it's not so easy to predict when the next beat will occur, children have a much harder time at timing their eye gaze. So we know they're using the rhythm to structure this really important form of social communication.
And these problems would arise also when babies are listening to people speaking, because when you're speaking, it's not rhythmically in the same sense.
That's 100% true. So singing, speaking, we're more rhythmic and predictable, and sometimes in ways that we speak to children compared to the ways we speak to adults, and particularly when the child's having a challenging time, people will get rhythmic without even meaning to, but it's not as easy to predict at all, because speech doesn't have that same beat-based structure. But I think then that also it's a different way of also thinking of the surprise that you were mentioning before, which is the way our brains are developing. We need the variety of different inputs that we're having, and so they serve like complementary and then also some integrated purposes in supporting that communication and language.
Yeah, so some people are going even so far that they are claiming that we have invented music, the humankind has invented music for the single purpose of helping our kids to learn this very complex thing called language. Most children probably would learn language without ever hearing anybody sing. But then there are cases when language learning is really difficult. So there are cases with hearing impairments, there are children who have specific learning problems, especially language learning problems. So those are children who would specifically need support starting from the day they were born to help the capabilities of their auditory system and of the whole system that they are building for speech understanding. So do you think it might be true that we have invented music for that purpose?
I think it's an interesting question to be thinking about the idea of inventing music, and that's like a real intentionality, and I think it's something that really like emerged and was maintained because it had these important, probably evolutionary benefits from multiple perspectives. I think we do see that children with a variety of neurodevelopmental conditions often have challenges with rhythm skills and rhythm and timing skills outside of the, say, speech domain or the communication domain. What those specific rhythm challenges may look like might be different depending on the specific neurodevelopmental condition, as well as, of course, there are vast individual differences. But since we know this is a commonality, I think one thing is the idea of using song because it gives that predictable rhythmic structure that it can support children in both drawing their attention in at those moments and in doing that fine-grained processing. And I think there's a really exciting growing body of research for a variety, developmental language disorder, autism, stuttering. Like there's so many different conditions where you're looking into how supporting children through the use of these beat-based rhythms, whether they be singing or whether they be musical, non-linguistic beat-based rhythms, seems to be supporting then performance on different types of linguistic tasks.
Yeah. You have been studying children with autism also in your lab.
Yes, that's a big area of focus. And children with autism have a variety of social communication difficulties. And one of the things we do see is that they often have challenges with that timing or coordination of social interaction. And so this is a case where it looks like one thing that may happen is using, I should say it's not for everybody, there's always individual differences, but certainly research that suggests that using these, using songs, because of that predictable structure, can help to make that social interaction more predictable. And we know that social interaction is really helpful for then supporting children's communication and language development. Sometimes we call these sort of developmental cascade models, whereas you learn one skill that helps you learn additional skills. And so helping children time their social interaction so that they're paying attention at the same time as the person they're interacting with, as well as, of course, to the same thing, then provides opportunities to, say, learn the vocabulary name around the object because you're paying attention to it at the exact same time.
It was wonderful to talk to Assistant Professor Miriam Lense, and please also go and check her recent research papers on these topics.